Okay, so I'm going to have a hard time kind of explaining my thought process for this video, so bear with me. It's going to be a difficult one, but I wanted to pose a question to you because it's a question I kind of asked myself yesterday. It's a fairly simple one, but it ends up causing some problems when it comes to Lego specifically. If I were to pose this question to you, if I were to ask you to create a mechanism where you had claws that open and close, very simply like that. Think of an excavator with claws at the end of its boom, whatever the case. What would you put forward as a simple mechanism to do that? The first thing that I can think of, the first thing that comes to my mind immediately is a set of two identical gears. And the reason that this works is because anytime you pair two gears of the same size together, when one turns, the other is always going to turn in the opposite direction, at least when it comes to Lego gears. So much that if they are the same size, they're going to turn at the same speed too. Thus, both parts of the claw will open in tandem at the same speed, going the same distance apart, whatever. Anyway, however, I want you to actually try this with Lego, because the problem you're going to find is that they do not sync up. They don't fully align. And the reason for that is actually really simple, and it is something that Lego has solved for in the past. However, today, they don't really have any solution for it, at least not with beveled or triangular teeth gear like these. They did recently come out with a piece for a knob gear that'll do this, and I'll talk about that here in a moment, which is so good that it exists. But why don't these work? Well, the main reason is the amount of teeth on all of the triangular teeth gears and on all of the beveled gears currently being produced by Lego, all are divisible by 4 and all align, the teeth align with the axle. Meaning if I were to take something on this axle here and just run it straight up, it's going to align with this particular tooth. If I rotate it 90 degrees, this tooth. If I rotate it 90 degrees, you get the point, right? It always aligns with the teeth and never a tooth gap, meaning the gap between the teeth. The problem with that is that when you mesh two gears together, one tooth has to align with the tooth gap on the other side, meaning that if this axle is straight up and down, this one can't be, because that's going to be two teeth going together and they need to pass each other. So this one's always going to offset by a little, and I can show you this visibly, just like this. We're going to come back to this in a moment. However, as I mentioned, maybe alluded to, Lego has solved this problem in the past. A gear that they no longer produce, in fact, I believe they stopped producing maybe in the 90s or early 2000s, this one right here. This is the beveled 14 tooth gear. This was a very common gear in early Technic, and the reason that this one's a pretty good one to have, although I think it exclusively works on bevels and they don't mesh, don't quote me on that, is that because this has 14 teeth, when the axle is aligned up and down, you can see it aligns with this tooth right here. However, if we rotate it 90 degrees, the axle now aligns with a tooth gap, meaning that you could mesh two of these side by side, or more realistically, at a bevel. And you could have both axles in alignment with each other in the same phase, synced up. Now, like I said, Lego has solved this problem as of this year, thanks to the knob gear. They came out with a brand new knob gear this year that has its axle offset by 45 degrees. It's in at least 2 sets so far. The Surface Space Loader has one. The Mack electric garbage truck has one. Probably in some other sets too, I haven't looked, but essentially all it is a knob gear, but where that axle is offset by 45 degrees. However, the knobs themselves, the actual teeth on that gear, are not, meaning that if that axle was to be shifted this way, well, now these knobs come out at a 45-degree angle, while these ones come out at a 90-degree angle. Does that make sense? So they mesh together and the axles are in alignment with each other. That's actually pretty cool. Now, how can you use this information? Well, gears are fun. I really, really would love for you to go out of your way and actually experiment with them yourselves, because they can be a lot of fun to mess with, and it's fun to learn sort of the principles of gears and like how they work. When you have two gears meshed together, they always turn in opposite directions, but when you have an odd number of gears meshed together, they always turn in the same directions. If you have a gear train, for example, gear chain, for example, whatever, then the gear at the beginning is your input, the gear at the end is your output, and any gear in between basically doesn't matter if if and only if they're all the same size, the same gear, essentially. It's really weird stuff. Essentially, if these were allowed to rotate, even though there is a gear of a different size in here, this is still a 1-to-1 movement because the gear at the beginning and the gear at the end are the same size, and the gear in the middle is in the same size as any other gear in the middle. In this case, there's just one, so there's no other gear in the middle. It's weird. Anyway, so why did I make a video on this? Well, yesterday, like I said, I was thinking to myself, how would you align things in very particular angles when it comes to Lego? Because Lego can be really weird, really fiddly to work within its own dimensions, its own, angles, and gears are a really good way to do it. They're not perfect because, for one thing, they're plastic and there's always some tolerance, so they have some leeway, they have some give, right? Some backlash. However, they work well enough for most things. But as you can see here, the gears are not in alignment with that center gear, which in this case is actually locked onto the axle. It cannot rotate. But that actually can be used in your favor because it means that because that center gear can't rotate, neither can these two on the outside. And so I could attach a lift arm here, for example, and have it come out at this really obscure angle, right? Or I could take that tooth off, I can move the gear and I can shift it around a little bit, and I can keep doing this. And the crazy thing about it is that I can mirror this, which is kind of weird. At first, my brain was like, that doesn't make sense. But no, it absolutely does. Because they always move in phase with each other. One more. In phase with each other. The gears are always going to be... That does not look right. I'm trying to align it by eye right now. So, as you can tell. There we go. Essentially, you can always have them in the same direction because the gear teeth, as I mentioned, are always the same on all four sides. Essentially, if you just took a mirror or cut this into 4 pieces, the gear teeth are always in the same position relative to each individual piece. And any gear that's meshed with it can be meshed at, again, specific intervals. So if the gears are the same, it means... Oh my god, my brain is just breaking. Like I am, it's not exploding, it's more like oozing out. Anyway, long story short, I was doing this all kind of in my head yesterday, and I realized that it meant that technically any gear that I connect to this center gear, if the center gear is locked in place, any other gear of the same size as the first can also be locked in the exact same position, which this technically is, if you think about it. If I was to move this tooth down, right? And then I take this tooth and move it down as well. You'll see they're in the exact same position. They're not in the same position because I got it wrong again. Anyway, I'm not remaking the video, but you can trust me on this. The point I'm trying to make is that if it's in the same position, it also means that you could mirror that position, and therefore, you can, oh, I messed it up. I'm trying to sit here and do this while I'm talking, which is probably not a good idea. There we go. So now they're in the same exact position. That's what I meant to do. Which, if they're in the same position, means that if you rotate it by 90 degrees, because all Lego axles rotate at 90 degrees, then they're always in opposite positions. My brain's broke. But you get the point I'm trying to get at, right? Whew. Hopefully, this helps you out. I don't know if any of this information is helpful, to be honest. The other thing I wanted to talk about in this video, and I'm just going to throw it in at the very end here, is for the longest time, the Borak Eye, which is another reason why I chose to use these pieces as rotation indicators, was the last piece that Lego, or rather the oldest piece from Bionicle that Lego was still using. However, recently that mold was updated on the inside. It's pretty hard to see from the front side. There is a difference. Most notably, the axle hole is no longer recessed in there, but the back side is where it's most evident. And so I asked myself, well, if that piece has changed, it's like technically a new mold, or at least a modification on the mold. What is now the new oldest piece from Bionicle that Lego still produces? And I think technically it's this one here. This is the hip piece that was made for the Matoran for 2003. I don't know if it was made exclusively for those Matoran. I'll have to look back at what else in 2003 used this piece, but it was developed at least in part for those Bionicle sets. However, the only other piece that comes to my mind right now is actually this one. This is still being produced by Lego as well. In fact, we just saw it in a Formula One car in orange, standard orange, which is good because it's a new color for that piece. And it does come in a lot of colors, thankfully. Before I end the video, the other last thing I want to say about it is, other than old purple, this comes in every single color from the McDonald's Matoran. You can get it in this color here. You can't get it in standard blue, I don't think. I'll have to look back on it. You can get it in yellow. You can get it in dark turquoise, which is Kongu's color. You can get it in... which other one? Oh no, I'm missing one. My brain. Sand blue from one of the Avatar sets. I feel like I've seen it in blue, but I'm not positive I have. It's in other shades of blue though. But yeah, the only color that doesn't exist currently is old purple, because that's not a color that Lego uses anymore. So still really cool that you can get it for all the other Matoran. Anyway, I'm going to end this video because it's kind of gone off the rails, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something from this. You can kind of see a little bit of insight into my brain and how it works now. And yeah, if you're scared, yeah, you know how it feels to be me. I'm just joking. So I will see you all in the next one. Of course, make sure to like and subscribe because it helps the channel out. I don't need to say any more than that. And of course, if you want to join the conversation, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Are you old enough to remember the 14-tooth gear? Or if not, or maybe if so, what's the most obscure gear that you can remember from Lego? I got some really old ones from a bulk Lego store kind of recently that I really want to play around with, but they actually have metal inside of them too, which I was not expecting. It's like used for the clutch for the axle. It's really weird. They're really strange, but they look so classic, and I can't wait to use them on something. And of course, if you want to take the conversation further, you can head on over to Discord, Instagram, or Patreon if you want to help support the channel and get some perks. And yeah, I guess ring the notification bell. I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care.